This episode is brought to you by Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard of Anchor, you should definitely check them out. It's a super easy tool that anyone can use to create and distribute their podcast. It has everything you need, and you can do it all from your computer or even your phone. Need your podcast cover art? There's a tool. Music and sound effects? They have you covered. Want to record on the fly? It's easy with the app. Now you may be saying to yourself, I already have a podcast. No worries, just create your account, upload, and publish to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Looking for some walking around money? Anchor connects you with advertisers who match your brand. It's a one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome to BizQuik. I'm Corey.
And I'm Julie.
And today we have part one of You Are Not Alone, a limited series on mental and financial wellness. We've all had a really stressful year, and we've heard from so many people, not just small business owners, that they're at their breaking point.
This podcast series isn't just for small business owners. We truly believe that everyone can benefit from these conversations. In a year when so many have had challenge after challenge, we wanted to find a way to offer some help and hope.
We decided to reach out to our various networks to bring together a few experts that will hopefully give you some advice and guidance on how to keep going. We believe in the never say quit entrepreneurial spirit, and these experts will provide insight through their knowledge and their own experiences on ways to keep on moving forward.
This podcast will be released every Saturday in the month of December, and it's going to feature a licensed therapist as well as business and financial experts telling their stories and giving you advice on how to keep yourself sane.
With that said, we'd like to bring on Heather Vargo. She is a trauma therapist out of the Philadelphia area with over 25 years of experience as a licensed clinical and social worker. She's going to give advice and some real talk about what you may be going through right now. Hey, Heather, welcome to the show. How are you doing
today? Hey, Corey, thanks for having me. I'm pretty good. Yourself?
Doing well.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Heather. This is a really special conversation.
It's my pleasure.
This is a special conversation, one that we've wanted to have after having a lot of different conversations over the past couple of months. And since you are a therapist, we're just going to start with this question. How's business?
Well, Julie, I can say COVID has been good for business, for my business anyway. Yeah. Fortunately and unfortunately, I think. Mm-hmm.
I guess that's good that you're seeing an uptick in people, which means people are reaching out for help.
Yeah, more people are reaching out for help. People that maybe I haven't heard from in a couple of years are coming back for, some support. So you're seeing kind of a combination.
And what are you primarily seeing, like from your clients who are coming back and just in general? Since you are a trauma therapist, there's probably some themes in there.
Yeah, I see a lot of people who struggle with anxiety and depression, and I think you're seeing just more extremes in terms of intensity and symptoms. So somebody who, was maybe managing pretty well prior to COVID, maybe is needing to increase their medication or go to therapy more often to try to maintain, their same mood stability. The isolation and the, environmental stressors, just can be really triggering for anybody, but especially somebody who has a history of trauma. So you're going to see an exacerbation in symptoms.
It's great that there's, a number of people that have come back to you or that you're continuing to see through all of this. Let's focus a little bit on the people who aren't reaching out for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this entire group of people that, I like to refer to them as the fringe people who feel like there's nowhere to turn. Maybe they, lost their job or they lost a loved one or they're really, really isolated or, their financial situation is just dire at this point and they don't know where to turn. Yeah. So from a mental health perspective, what are some ways that group of people can start to, turn the tide a little bit and feel better?
I mean, I've been a therapist for 25 years, and I no longer feel like therapy is a luxury. I really feel like therapy should, be available like any other medical specialty. So I think what I am seeing, I don't see too many people on the fringe. Like I said, most of my clients are pretty pretty high functioning. They have good jobs. I'm seeing a lot of their companies step up in the sense that, like Aetna, for example, if you work for certain companies, they'll pay your copay. So, my patients' copays are being waived, which is affording them the ability to come to therapy weekly if they want to. Whereas prior to that, it would have been, too expensive if they have like a $60 copay, so to speak. So that's, I'm seeing, like, that's nice to see that you're seeing large companies, like, I don't want to name names, but that they're recognizing and encouraging their employees to, seek these benefits. But I think with the smaller business people and people who aren't so fortunate, it does feel more like maybe a luxury item. I would say try to find some support, online if you have to. There's groups, there's, all kinds of telehealth, but really just talking to someone. Could be a priest, it doesn't have to be just someone who's trained to be a good listener, can really make a huge difference in someone's, ability to cope.
You'd mentioned isolation as being one of the big triggers or problems that people are facing today. What are some ways? We're doing this over Zoom. So much of our life now is remote. It's digital. How would you recommend people connect? And because this remote connection is not the same as being in person. And we are social creatures.
Not at all. And I think people, I certainly was resistant to it at first, and I'm the type of person that if I'm afraid of something and I need to get past it, then I just dive in, because there's just no way around it. So that's what you do, you dive in, and if you have some experience at that, where you've done that and you've landed on your feet, as any small business owner probably has done, then it's not as scary, than for people who've never done that before, right? But so I was all new to Zoom, and I figured it out. I'm still figuring it out. It's not my strength. I don't want it to be. I make no apologies for that. I do my best, and I still see clients in person because that's what I prefer. I did start a group. I started 2 groups since COVID. I'd already had a couple going just because there was definitely more of a need. But I think just getting outside and getting around nature, animals, people, I think something Julie said earlier kind of just is, important to note that for people to reach out for support and to want to connect, they have to first acknowledge that there's a need there, and that there's that they are lonely, and that's okay. Like, we are social beings. I don't think people realize how much humans need one another. We don't do well in isolation. We're not meant to be in isolation. We are meant to be in groups, in families, in communities. And we suffer as a result when we're not.
We're definitely social creatures, and there are a number of things working against people being social right now, right? So every state is under different guidelines, and it at some points it feels really overwhelming. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask about like tips or guidance that people can take in terms of I'm just going to frame it as consumption, right? Because we're at a time where it feels like consumption of like the bad things is at an all-time high, right?
Yeah.
People are drinking too much. There's drugs. People are consuming way too much television, too much Netflix. People are consuming too much news, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I frequently have to remind friends, turn off your television, stop watching it. It's just stop. And I know we're not a political podcast. We typically do everything we can to avoid talking on either side. But this is a really dangerous time for people psychologically, because it very much is two sides pitted completely against each other. So there's a lot of things around consumption that we can talk about, and I'd like to step into that if you don't mind.
I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about, like, things that we do to kind of self-medicate,
Yes.
right? And, I think there's a definite uptick in that, and I think it's it's obviously something we have to be aware of. I think it's like finding this balance between, like, being okay with not being okay, and which might mean maybe I'm eating more than I should be, or not exercising as much as I want to be, or drinking more caffeine or more wine on weeknights, but I'm not going to, like, beat myself up over it, because that's a slippery slope versus, making an excuse for it or justifying or rationalizing it. Or, I think it's really about tuning in as to, like, what's going on, like, what am I not wanting to feel, that thing is going to maybe take its place. For me, boredom's a big one, so if you're not getting out, and like I get a little stir crazy, so, like, online shopping, yeah, that kind of keeps that dopamine going. I mean, swipe one swipe, holy mackerel, and there you go. It's like, who knew? But yeah, I think it's just about stop, pause, kind of like tune in and sit with whatever that is, that anxiety, that despair, just a minute longer than you think you can before turning to that avoidance strategy, if you will, that can be really reinforcing and addictive, So, like, trying to tolerate more distress, and primarily physiological. Like, as a trauma therapist, I deal with the brain, a lot of it from, like, the neck down, if you will. So you look at how, like, your body's nervous system is impacted by, the environment and what that can trigger. So, when people start to feel maybe their heart racing a little bit, or sad, and maybe they don't, or scared, and they don't want to feel that or think about that, they just turn to something else, maybe, YouTube video, or see a lot of that as a therapist, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of, which is just further isolating, right? And then it just kind of leads down this path of, like, suffering, essentially, as opposed to healing or connecting.
And you had said something about, just a minute ago about just kind of taking whatever that stress is, and just dealing with it just a little bit longer, to really live in that moment. For a lot of people out there, I think that everybody's, there are a lot of people out there that are at the end of their rope. They've been taking that stress for, this 2-week lockdown that's now been 6 months.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you, what would be your recommendation for them?
I mean, my mantra is always, this is temporary, because everything's fucking temporary. Are you allowed to curse on this? No?
You just did. You're okay. It's a Saturday special,
really,
so you're fine.
Right? Like, I say, if anybody wants to get anxious, just thinking about dying, we can all make ourselves really anxious if we want to. It's really where, it's like, where focus goes, energy flows, kind of a thing. And I think what is scary for people, and what gets overwhelming for people, is when they don't see an end in sight. And I think that's why this time in particular, politically, is so triggering, because we just want it to be over. We just want to move forward. We just want to, and we're in limbo, and we feel like we've been in limbo for so long, and we feel like we just can't take any more. But there will be an end in sight. There has to be an end in sight. Our logical minds know that, we just have to convince the rest of us, which takes time. It's not a switch.
But what if there is no end in sight? So,
Well, I mean, with COVID,
yeah,
with
well,
like the isolation.
and a lot of, everybody's been, that's what all they've been saying is like, oh, when we'll get back to normal, we'll get back to normal. But what if this is what life is going to be like for a very long time? I mean, depending on, whatever news reports you read or whatever, that, I've seen things where lockdowns could last up to, into 2022. So, what?
Well, I guess, one of the benefits I have going for me is I am an optimist. And I also am a scientist. And so, that's what I believe. That's what I read. And, I'm excited for the vaccine. I think, that will give people who are the most vulnerable. They're talking about early next year, I'm hoping. No, I agree. I think nothing will be quite the same. Once you go through something like this, like it forever changes, the way you look at things. I don't know that I can say what's going to help people that are at the end of the rope. I think that you have to, again, find that balance between burnout, because I think so many people just think they just have to push through it and just make it, force it, as opposed to maybe step back and just feel it and fall apart for a day or two and then get back up and do it again tomorrow. And literally it's like a one day at a time when you're in that kind of survival mode, it's just, what's the next thing I have to do? Literally, just map it out, moment by moment. If you can't think big picture, this eventually will get me here, just keep plugging and find out, it really comes down to finding what, I've gotten really into houseplants, crazy. My husband is ready to kill me. It's a jungle down there. That's been my obsession, and I love it. It's been awesome. It's thank God for houseplants. Otherwise I would be totally an alcoholic by now. You have to find something that's not gonna, hurt you, but help you, and lean into that.
Sure.
Find something creative, pick up something, just get curious, try to, or just take a rest, take a break, and then regroup and get back out there.
I think it's great advice. I think it's also probably hard for a number of people to take their mind off of it and stop thinking about things like that for a while. Just to take a break from it.
I think you were saying, limiting the news. I tell my patients to do the same thing. Recognize what's activating you. When you start to feel anxious, scared, that what's going on, who, what, where, why, you know what I mean? Recognize when you start to feel calmer, when you feel more content or at peace, mental note. And you really want to lean into those moments because, our brain is so conditioned to remembering the negatives with so much more vivid detail than positive moments. And that's why this whole gratitude practices you hear about is so popular, because it really helps, lay those pathways that will help people be more hopeful in times of distress.
Which is important. And that's, the beauty of physical activity, especially physical activity outdoors, can also help with the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It really,
I think of it as mental physical. It's mental physical activity. It's mindfulness is essentially what I'm talking about. It's a practice, just like training for a marathon. You don't just show up and run, you do it every day, right? We've done that. Yep. So it's the same thing. You have to commit to it. And your mental health is like anything else with your health. What you put into it is what you get out of it.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to something that we were talking about earlier when you had said to reach out to people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist or a social worker or
Right.
whoever that, go to a priest or just
Your
somebody.
hairdresser.
Yeah. But there's something that I've noticed this trend, and I don't know if it's tied to social media, but I'm going to tie it to social media because I feel like everything is social media's fault. That's just me personally. But I have noticed a trend in that when you reach out to people to talk, that I could say like, hey, I'm really struggling with X, and rather than getting a how can I help or tell me more about that or whatever it is, you get a top that response like, oh, well, I'm struggling with X and Y.
Yep.
And it gets to the point where you don't want to talk to people because all you're doing is you're trying to feel better or get somebody to help, just to listen to you, and you end up taking someone else's problems on.
Well, right. That's why people come to me.
Right. So if I'm in a group that I can't afford you, or my circumstances don't allow for someone to come to a therapist, or a licensed professional, what are some qualifiers that people can put around having conversations with other people that are just simple boundaries to help them actually feel better at the end of a conversation rather than absorbing someone else's shit?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you can't.
Well, I want to add just on top of that, for me, being a guy, I like to problem solve. I don't like to listen. So if you can kind of incorporate that into there as well, that'd be great.
True. Fact.
Which part you want me to do the problem solving part? Like add that part to it?
No. So that when, for somebody like me, like if one of my friends were to reach out and they're like, hey, I've got this problem, COVID's been, killing me, whatever, I'm immediately going to start trying to figure out ways to help when all they might need is just to get something
to
off their
listen.
chest. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say to you, like, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, like, pause. We do everything so automatically. We just react. Like we just, especially under stress, right? So all the more reason to just like, if this is a thing that you do, like, then that's something you want to like pay special attention to, right? Like, so I'm not going to just react on and try to fix it. I'm going to pause and I'm going to try to be more of an active listener. So there's things called horizontal questions versus vertical questions. Horizontal questions are more like the facts, where you can get like but horizontal questions really help you vertical questions help you lean into, really getting, and it's about being attuned and like being able to know like that something, is going on with someone. And I think a lot of people, like in your case, Corey, I would say like maybe you don't want to sit with the distress of him having a problem. You want to impose a fix so that like it's over with and now we can like be done with it, as opposed to like just like watching someone be struggling when you can't fix it. Like, what does that bring up for you? Feelings of powerless and inadequacy? I don't know, but like that's your stuff that you shouldn't impose on someone else, right? Like that's something that you, as a therapist, we always kind of like have to keep in mind. So give that person, the space to have their own feeling or experience, that we're not trying to manipulate it somehow. Yeah. So I would say like pause, right? And then say, just so I know, because I want to help. Are you looking for, some advice? Do you just want me to listen? Like, what do you need right now? And I always give people like, yeah, I want your advice. What the fuck? Like, but like, most people like, why do you think I'm telling you I want your advice? Like, I just don't want to impose it on you. I don't want to assume most, you know, but like not everybody wants that. Like sometimes you just want to be heard, right? You just want to be felt, really, you know? And when someone's trying to like fix it or like push you like further along than you are, then it kind of like it feels off, and then it kind of is, you know, it's not very fulfilling, right? So
we wanted to take a quick break to tell you more about SB Pace, the small business consulting company that makes this podcast possible. SB Pace, which stands for Small Business Planning, Advising, Coaching, Expertise, focuses solely on helping small businesses and entrepreneurs. Are you looking to start a small business of your own? SB Pace can get you up and running with a solid foundation that's built to last. Are you an existing small business in a slump or just looking for ways to improve what you do? We can help with that. Are you ready to take your business to the next level? SB Pace is the partner you need. You can find out more about SB Pace and what we have to offer by visiting our website, sbpace.com.
I had this experience recently, and this hopefully will help our listeners to understand that the effects of 2020 are, you know, everybody has some, they've impacted everyone, right? So, and certainly, you know, none of us on this podcast are immune to the effects of it. So, and the last month has been, I would say, brutal for most people, simply because I think a lot of people woke up on November 4th, Wednesday, November 4th, hoping the election was over. And probably most people got to the point where they didn't care who the winner was. They just needed it to end. And here we are almost a month later, and it still hasn't ended. But you know, there's just like a lot of accumulative things that have happened. So without saying the who in this situation, I had reached out to 3 very close people to me recently on a text thread, and just was like letting them know like, hey, I'm really struggling. I'm having a tough time. And I ended it with, I'm not okay, right? Thinking that the response, and I didn't put any parameters around how I wanted people to respond. I just wanted to be heard. And it's a very mixed reaction to what happened next, because after I sent the text, all 3 people replied back, echoing that they were also not okay. And so there was a part, and then giving, you know, details as to why. And there was a part of me that was really grateful that I had created accidentally this opportunity for people to talk about not being okay. But there was also a part of me that was really frustrated. That I went unheard, and I was like,
so it seems like what you were, you know, in that case, like you weren't looking for, you're not alone, because we're not okay with you. You know, you were looking for that one-on-one, like I see you, I feel you, you know. So maybe a one-on-one would have been better, you know, than a group. Maybe, you know, as a tip.
That's a good tip. That's
because then there's like, then it's more about you, and there's more of there's less opportunity for that misattunement when it's one-on-one. And I think the other thing is, and you know, this is a tough one for people, but it's ask for what you need. Use your words. You know, you're a grown-up now, and it's like, you know, when we were younger, you know, our parents, they should have been able to read our minds, essentially. Really, like that's what really good parents do, is they freaking pretty much predict like what the kids need. Sometimes they get it wrong, they let you know, you course adjust, etc. But if you didn't have that, then you're not so good at even knowing yourself, let alone helping others to, you know. So you need to learn how to do that, you know, and you need to be okay with doing that. That's kind of what I was saying about, you know, I think people, you know, thank God in 25 years, my God, like I'm 50, you know, I started doing this at 25, and, you know, it's like the stigma has really gotten so much less. I mean, it's like, and now, I mean, that one of the positive things that have come out of COVID is, you know, again, even less of a stigma around mental health, less of a stigma around addictions and substance abuse, less of a stigma around domestic violence and needing help. It's because it's more out there, it's obviously it's more prevalent. So, it's more acceptable, and that's a good thing. I forget where I was going with that. Sorry.
That's a good answer.
That is. And I think we want to circle back to what you're talking about with the vertical versus horizontal questions as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I would just say, I would reach out. Julie, I think you're kind of like me in that you're the person everybody comes to when they're in need. That's why I still have a therapist, and to God, because I need someone that's just going to make it about me, and if I'm in a fortunate position that I can afford that, $30 copay, but, it's being waived right now. So take advantage of that. No, I'm getting my kids in therapy. Like, I think therapy's great. I think that people need to get over the fact that they think they have to do it on their own. I mean, and I hear a lot of people say, like, how can therapy help me? And it's like, well, how can, you don't know what you don't know, like people don't even realize I think of it as like how we get in our own way, whether it's like limited thinking or, like distorted, patterns and like beliefs, but just trying to identify like where you're struggling and, first of all, accept it, and then like take responsibility for it, and make it a priority like you would anybody that you care about. And if the people in your life aren't so good at that, like, you can teach them. I mean, I have trained my friends and my husband to be better listeners, for me. So we'll talk about the questions, because this is like the best way I think to teach somebody is to model behavior. I'm just reading these and I'm thinking of my teenagers, because this is like literally what it's like talking to a teenager, It's like, where did you go? Out. What are you buying? Stuff. Like, these are just like very, one point, as opposed to
questions.
These are the horizontal questions. Did you have fun? Yeah. No. What would you do? Nothing. Like that kind of stuff. So examples of vertical questions would be, where did you go? The answer. Why'd you go there? Like, get curious about it, like dig in a little bit, what are you buying? Why'd you pick that to buy? What do you like about that? What made you pick that? Like, and say, did you have fun? Yeah. What made it fun? Why was it fun? What was fun about it? Like, just don't give up so easy. I think people are quick to kind of just take that simple answer and leave it at that. And really, if you want to feel felt, if you want to be seen and be heard, you have to lean into, the details. Some of this too is about like the nonverbal, if someone's saying, oh, it was fine, and you can tell, like, really? I mean, this is huge for people who tend to not talk and tend to, like, internalize things until they kind of blow. It's good to, be able to recognize when you think something's bothering them and be able to tune into that and kind of know when maybe, you're saying one thing but feeling another, well, when they are too. And to kind of notice that, like, oh, you say that, but you don't look like it, or you seem like something else. Are you sure about that? Like, as opposed to just, the rote kind of, how was your day? Fine. Like, take a moment, pause, tune in, make eye contact, stop what you're doing. Like, just, it's all it takes.
Yeah. And that's probably good advice for people that are both, feeling okay, and people that are really, on the edge or needing some.
Or wanting just more connection, right? I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about. We're talking about feeling isolated and lonely. And, I know people that are in relationships and feel lonely,
Sure.
that have extended family and feel lonely because they don't really
There's no connection.
feel, yeah, yeah. And I feel like sometimes people just don't know how. They don't know how, they want to fix it, or they want to, get to the point or whatever, and I would say, like, you could be missing out, it's you think about like the outcome. When are we going to get over this, as opposed to like, all right, well, like, let's look at where we are with this and how can we, I'm a big fan of like making it like maybe just 5-10% better, because like over the long haul, that adds up. It's not a switch, there's not a trick, it's work.
It is definitely work. So we have to unfortunately start wrapping up this episode, and this has been a lot of valuable information. Can you think of just one piece of advice or words of comfort? I don't even know if that's the right word, that our listeners can, sort of take heed and maybe push them in the right direction.
I would say just pay attention to like where you spend, a lot of your energy, like your emotional energy. Like, where do you spend, like, where do your thoughts go? Are they often down the path of shoulda, coulda, woulda, in the past, or what if in the future? Or are they, also more about being in the moment, trying to find moments of like, where you feel you have some control or contentment or some really sense of agency over all of this? Because I think what you're referring to, Julie, is like this feeling of helplessness that people have. And, we can manifest these things, right? But we can manifest them positively and negatively, really. And so if you can, start to shift your focus and try and find out more on resilience and what you're doing well, how you've made it this far, and what you have going for you, and focusing on your strengths and what you have, and it's going to help. It's going to help buffer, the negative.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. If there are people out there who are listening who are looking for help, I know that there are certain laws regarding your ability to practice across state lines and whatnot. But if they wanted to reach out to you, or if they just wanted to get more information, I mean, I know they could probably reach out to you directly, but is there a particular website or someplace they could go?
Yeah. I have a website. I can send it to you. www.lifeguidanceassociates.com.
We will put that in the show notes, because that was almost a whisper. I'm not sure what happened.
www.lifeguidanceassociates.com. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
humble. I mean, I'm not looking, I'm booked. I'm good. But I mean, we're all booked. That's the thing. Like, the therapists are really busy right now. We're not hurting for, I think people who want help are seeking it. I think, unfortunately, there's maybe not enough available right now, like a lot of other things. So I think shows like this are really helpful for people who want the help, maybe even have the resources, but, it's just, it's a tough time for everybody. So
It is.
there's less resources.
All right. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yep. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks again to all our listeners and our expert, Heather Vargo, for all of the great advice today. Check the show notes to learn more about Heather, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Our contact information is in the show notes as well.
Our next episode of this series will be released Saturday, December 12th, and will feature Chris Cannon, who's going to talk about financial recovery. And if you'd like to hear more of our business-focused podcast, head on over to bizquickpodcast.com. You can also visit our company's website at sbpace.com to learn more about us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for tuning in.